Uh, Hello, everyone. This is the Ghost Gamer here, and we're going to start a new segment on the channel called By the Numbers, where we break down a board game based off the statistical value and then analyze the best play through that. And this week, we're going to break down Splendor, and I'm going to be doing it with my co-host, Lynn. Lynn, why don't you tell us some stuff about yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Lynn, and a fun fact about me is I have two cats, Marple and Poirot, named after Agatha Christie's detectives.
And they are quite cute cats.
They're so fluffy. Oh, I can link their Instagram below. Their Instagram will be in the description below.
Yeah, but that only goes to the Patreon. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's get started then.
So yeah, I guess we can go ahead and start. This week we'll be talking about the game Splendor. So if you haven't heard of or ever played the game Splendor before, Board Game Geek basically describes it as a game of chip collecting and card development. So basically, you get gem tokens to buy gem cards, and then you use gem cards and gem tokens to buy more gem cards to get gem cards with points on them until you get 15 points.
Yeah, the quick and dirty is that it's basically deck builder, but it definitely has quite a few unique aspects to it.
Now that we've covered the general play overview, your general turn looks like this. You have three different options. One generally can be described as taking gem tokens, and with that, you have two different options within that. You can either take three of different colors, so three tokens, but they're all desperate colors, or you can take two tokens of the same color if there are more than three left in the gem stack of that color. Just to highlight, which we haven't so far, is there are five different colors. A second option for your turn is to buy one gem card with tokens and cards, whatever your supply has in front of you, to pay off the cost on that card. And the third option is to reserve a gem card, and you get a wild token with that, which is basically a wild gem that you can use for any cost value as a single cost value. You can have
Yeah,
only up to three cards reserved at a time.
yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Taking three of different color is most efficient by token number, but oftentimes it's not always the option you want to go for.
Yeah, if you're trying to really build up a particular color, it does make sense sometimes to take two of the same color. Especially if someone is going to empty the gem stack before your next turn.
Yeah, that would be a real shame if that happened.
Real shame. Just some important notes to keep in mind that I highlight anytime I introduce somebody to the game is you win by points, not card or gem quantity. So that's just something to keep in mind as we develop this strategy or talk about strategies approaching this, because you may have the most gem cards, so therefore you have a high buying power, but you're not going to necessarily win. I would say that's actually a pretty long term strategy that in the long run you might win, but the game ends pretty quickly. So
Yeah, it definitely leaps out at you at the end because people will be chilling around 6 points, and then in just a matter of 4 or 5 turns, people will be at or near 15.
yeah, near the end of the game you can go by 5 points really quickly, turn by turn. Another thing to highlight is gem tokens are also a one-time use, whereas cards are unlimited. So the more cards you get earlier on in the game, the more uses you can get out of them, which just means the more things you can buy, which is very convenient. If you ever have the option, a lot of people work with the strategy of if you have the option of buying a card or getting gem tokens, buy the card. I think that has some merits, but it's not always the best strategy.
Yeah, if you can use a card the number of times that for the amount of chips that you have, then it's worthwhile in terms of chip cost. But if you don't think you can, then it's not worth buying. Unless for there's tangential reasons like royals or whatnot.
Yeah, if it's the end of the game and that card gets you no points, but you can get it for free, you're not going to be able to use that card enough to make it worth it. And the last thing which has already been mentioned, but is always just good to reiterate when you're playing, is you can reserve up to 3 cards. You can use that for different strategies, either to save the card, to block somebody from getting a card, or to get the wild tokens if you don't have enough tokens of a particular kind.
Yeah.
I guess this also highlights wild tokens do not need to be available for you to reserve a card.
And oftentimes they won't be because there's only 5 and people snatch them up pretty fast.
Yeah. I tend to spend mine pretty quickly, but it depends on who you're playing with.
Yeah.
So, Ghost, if you can just walk us through the numbers.
Yeah, so basically there's 5 colors of gems: white, blue, green, red, black, and there are 7 tokens of each color. Um, also, there are 40 level 1 cards, 8 of each color, 30 level 2 cards, 6 of each color, 20 level 3 cards, 4 of each color, and there's 10 merchants and, well, 10 nobles, I guess, and only 5 in play every game. And each color has 5 merchants that have their color on it. And while this might seem like this indicates that every single color is equal, and so you don't really need to consider this in your strategy, we will soon see that that is definitely not the case.
Yeah, just to highlight, Ghost was thrown off there a little bit. I've been calling them merchants. They're actually in the rules called nobles. Just for anyone who's actually played the game before and is confused at what we're talking about. So we'll go ahead and start with the nobles, because the nobles help highlight a pattern that we'll see later in the cards. The nobles themselves, some people choose to go for them for a strategy. I think they're more like Bob Ross's happy accidents is the right way to view them. I would normally aim my strategy to just happen chance them along the way. I wouldn't aim my strategy at particular nobles. So noble
Yeah.
cards you get basically by having gem cards, a certain number of gem cards, not gem tokens, gem cards, and then you get the noble for free on that turn. The maximum number of points you can get in a turn is buying a 5-point card that also happens to get you a 3-point noble. All nobles are worth 3 points.
Yeah. Nobles are definitely a very interesting aspect of the game. I probably go for them a little bit more than you should. But yeah, it's definitely a happy accident. Lots of times people will go for 2 or 3 colors, and if a noble happens to line with that, then it's great to just go slightly out of your way for it.
Yeah. What this image is actually showing is the different nobles' color pairings and their costs. So you'll see there one example is that white and blue 4/4. So that noble, if you have 4 blue cards and 4 white cards, you get that noble for free, and which gives you 3 points. So there are 5 cards that cost 8 gem cards, and then there are 5 noble cards that cost 9 gem cards.
Yeah, and this will also start to show us our natural pairings, because as we'll later on notice, is that certain colors pair better with each other than others do. But let's go on the next side and see more about that.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, we're not there yet.
not quite, not quite. This is something just to comment. When we strategize, when you're actually playing the game, you know what nobles are in place. You know which 5 nobles are in place. So all of your strategies in game, that's a known data fact. If you're trying to come up with strategies beforehand, just generically, it is important. It's helpful to know what the percentage chance that a color is present or not present in the nobles in the top pile. It's funny because when my friend and I actually compiled these numbers and we figured out it was 1 in 252 chance that you would have 0 of a color up in the nobles. The game we actually played to test some of our strategies was that 1 in 252nd chance, that 0.4%. It was just hilarious in the moment.
Yeah, as yeah, I mean this relates to what Lynn said, is there's only a 0.4% chance that there's not all 5 colors up there, and that really helps reiterate the fact that you really shouldn't go purely for nobles, because if you're gonna get you're gonna get all 5 nobles, that's 3 or 4 cards from every color, which is going to be at least 15 cards that you're going to have to reserve, and most games usually end within 17 turns or so. So you're just not going to be fast enough.
Yeah. We'll go ahead and move on to the level 3 cards. These are the main, I would say, the best point getting strategies. So you can see here the layout. There's 4 cards per each color, and so there's 20 cards at this level, as Ghost explained earlier. And you can see the different point amounts as well as their costs and their points per cost. At this level, everything's pretty even, and I'm sorry, Ghost, I can hear myself. If you can change that.
Oh, really?
It's really distracting.
So, can you hear yourself now?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Barely.
Wait, how long have you been able to hear yourself?
Only recently.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
No worries. It just got. I think it was mostly a little bit of last slide and mostly this slide. Okay. So for level 3, the percentages are pretty even. Um, each color has a primary support color, a secondary support color, and then 2 tertiary support colors. You'll see at the bottom of the slide there, the primary color, what that 53.49% is if you sum up the cost of all of these 4 cards, the primary support color is 53% of the cost in order to buy these cards.
Yeah, it's definitely really interesting that we'll look at the color breakdowns later, but it's definitely really interesting that over half of whatever color you're using is not paid for by itself, but is paid for by its primary color pairing.
Yeah, and somewhat of a secondary color pairing as well.
Yeah. Another thing to note is the efficiency of all the different cards. The 4 point the 7 primary cost card is the most efficient card in the game points wise at 0.57, and it's so efficient that lots of people tend to look for those and then build their strategy around getting to them.
Yeah, sometimes they even reserve them early. We'll go ahead and move on to the next slide to look at the color pairs. So here you can see the color pairs with each color is the top value there that is labeled itself, and then its primary support color is the one underneath it, and secondary, so forth, so on. So you can see there that green is mostly fed by blue, blue is mostly fed by white, so forth, so on. I don't know if you have any comments on this, Ghost.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that, like, if you have just played the game, a bunch, like you still wouldn't necessarily notice. And it's something like really interesting, because there's definitely a pattern here that each color has is exactly one other color's primary and whatnot. And it shows that they naturally lend themselves for pairings. So like you could go, blue, white, and then if you're going blue and white, then you could easily add like black or green as well, because then you'll have the primary color for that. Um, so it's definitely really interesting.
You'll notice across the top here, we actually have pulled the merchant circles, and each double and triple grouping matches a card, a pairing that is used at this tertiary level, at this level 3.
Yeah, so the merchants naturally do synergize with what gems the cards require themselves, which is something that I never really thought of or noticed before.
Yeah, it's really interesting to keep that in mind as you're moving through the different levels. We'll go ahead and move on to level 2, where this is where things get interesting. So notice there aren't any labels here on primary, secondary, or tertiary colors, and that is because the I think there's about 41 in order to buy all six of these cards. I think it's about 41 or 42 gems, and each color has that amount split between all the other colors, but it's not evenly split between each color. So here we just have labeled the point value of the card, the cost unique for each color and how many unique colors there are, and then the actual points per cost.
Yeah. Just glancing at this real quick. Uh, I'd like to point out that usually people don't ever go for those 1 point. 3-2-2 and 3-3-2, and you can definitely see why with how inefficient they are. I think those two are the most inefficient cards in the entire game. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, those,
yes.
those definitely are.
They
Um,
are the most inefficient. It's something to keep in mind if you can get those cards for free, if you already have gem cards stacked up such that those cards are more affordable for you, then um, I normally, when I'm playing the game, I normally am subtracting the cost minus the cards I already have, and then it helps. That would be the main scenario in which you would take those cards if your deck already happens to be that way. I wouldn't build a deck to get one of those cards.
yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, that's definitely the way to put it. Lots of times though, people do play around the 3.6 cost and the 2.5 cost, because those are reasonably efficient and they're also reasonably easy to get. Especially they're quite good for the middle level, as they're almost twice as efficient as the other cards here.
Yeah, the average points per cost per card in this game is 0.33, so those two are both above average.
All right, I think we can look at the breakdown.
Yeah. So level 2 is where the colors get interesting. I don't know if you notice anything off the bat, Ghost.
Yeah, there's blue pays for a lot of blue, and green does as well. Just not quite as much, but that's really interesting.
Yeah, just to highlight on this page, I suppose we didn't clarify this already, but each graph that's labeled, that is the card you are buying, and then each color within that ring is the cost, the card that you are paying to get whatever the title card is. And you'll also notice that each circle obviously sums up to 100%, but then if you also sum all of the portions of that color between all the circles, that will also sum to 100%.
Yeah, I yeah. So I think from just glancing at this, that you could buy blue at level 1, level 2, and then that could help you buy more blue at level 2, and then you could transition that into I think that transitions into green at level 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Um,
blue feeds towards the high point green cards.
yeah. So I mean that just looking at this, it seems like buying blue, it would be a really self-building strategy because you only need to go after blue.
Yeah, it really depends on how the cards show up. If you have many blue cards that show up in a row. Now, do remember there are only 6 blue cards at this level. So if
That's
all blue
true.
cards have come through and they've been bought, you cannot buy more blue cards. So in that case, if everyone's going for the blue buy blue strategy, you'll get cut off pretty quickly.
That's true, but the green isn't too much worse than that, and I think green builds red, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Um. Okay. Yeah. So you could do a similar thing for go green at this level, go red level 3, but it's definitely really interesting that they didn't even go with an even breakdown.
Yeah.
Another thing I noticed is that I really like going black at level 1, and that's because I play a really wide strategy. And if we look here, black is it appears to be either black or white, I guess, to be the most evenly distributed color. Um, and I suppose, yeah, and it also does not pay for itself almost at all. So that's probably why I go pretty heavily in black chips early on and black cards.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you might be thinking of the level 1. Black doesn't green is the weakness for black here. Black does pay almost 20% towards black, but no color is inherently worse than the other at this level because they all do sum to 100%. It depends on what kind of strategy you're looking for. Do you want to buy many cards of the same color, or do you want to be more diverse?
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, it's definitely something to consider. Um, yeah. So blue and green probably make for a more straightforward strategy. At least that it appears to be. Uh, yeah, this is definitely something to look at. But obviously, the lived reality of the game, what cards are out there. So it's not necessarily you just go off this.
Yeah, this helps you keep in mind if the card you want you're not going to be able to buy this turn, and you need to decide what tokens to get, but you don't know what the future costs of other cards may be. If you know that if you want to eventually buy blue cards if they come up, you should get blue tokens. That's a good thing to keep in mind.
What do we have next for us, Lynn?
We have the level 1 cards, and you notice there is one level 1 card that's slightly glowing, and that is because this is the only level 1 card that gets you points. It is a 4-cost card that gets you 1 point.
Yeah, it's definitely really interesting that it's included here. I'm not sure how many people in your games go after it, but it doesn't seem like it's a super prized thing in my games. Usually people at this level are just going after whatever colors they want.
Yeah, primarily those, as well as any of the 2-3 cost cards. Those are pretty nicely. You can get those within 2 turns. Most of these other cards you can get within 2 turns, but the 3-cost cards, you're immediately you buy them. You have 3 cards. You're moving on. You can use your next tokens for something else.
Yeah. Have you ever played any like deck building games or stuff like that?
Yes, I've played Dominion quite a bit.
Yeah, lots of times people refer to it as like your stuff to go through your cards and trashing bad stuff as building your engine, and that's really what level 1 is for. And so like the 3 cost cards are really invaluable for building an engine, because it might not seem that much different between 3 cost and 4 cost, but that's a 25% discount if you can get a couple 3 card costs early. Then you're already accelerating yourself quite a bit ahead of your opponents.
Especially the 3-card versus 5-card cost. There's
Yeah.
some significant differences there. We'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. This is the color breakdown for the level 1 cards. So
Okay.
this is something to keep in mind if you're aiming for a particular color at level 2, then you should take the token colors that feed into that color that you need to buy for level 2. So if you're going for blue at level 2, blue feeds blue. So in order to get blue cards at level 1, it looks like it's mostly black, red, and green tokens.
Yeah. Do all these still add up to 100%?
Yes. So again, at this point, they've stabilized the game. It's evenly played here. Each card color is sums up to 100%, both within the payment of itself as well as within if you sum up across all colored payments.
Yeah. You were definitely right that I was indeed thinking of level 1 when I said that on level 2. That I always seem to run out of not run out of black because black never buys black, but black buys everything else.
Yes, true. But I mean, it's still limited at level 2. But definitely, black is. I've often found in games when I've played with myself as well with you, the black tokens often run out early on. There's some competition for the black tokens.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely a lot to absorb, but basically if you're going for anything at the next level up, then you should look at what feeds into that and then consider how to get it a level down.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide as we simmer on this. So these are just 2 last slides to highlight kind of the point distribution between cards. and different ways you can get points, since the goal of the game is to get the most points. The game ends when someone has 15 points, but the goal of the game is to get the most.
Yeah. Oftentimes, everyone gets the exact same number of turns, um, and so basically, you just finish out the round whenever anyone gets 15 points. But oftentimes, people will win with like 16 or even 17 points. In fact, like my ideal win scenario would be to get like a 5 point, um, you know, which is super efficient, a 4 point which is pretty inefficient, and then like a noble and a 3 point that's the same color as the 4 or 5 point. So a good example would be getting like the blue 3 point, the blue 4 point, and then building that into a white 5 point or something like that, and then picking up the noble.
Yeah,
um
that makes a lot of sense for chaining that way.
Actually, in retrospect, that's only 15 points, but oftentimes you'll just end up with more than 15, just because that's how things shake out.
Yeah, you'll just need some extra cards here and there, so sometimes you just buy them because you can. This shows the point distribution. The next slide. This shows the point cost. So you'll notice the best cards that are point cost wise are the level 3 and level 2 cards. The nobles are about average, and the level 1 cards are below average.
Yeah, it's really hard to I think properly put the nobles in a spot, because you're not paying with chips, you're paying with cards, but it also doesn't take a turn to purchase them. So I think it about evens out, and I definitely think that while they're not like the most efficient thing, if you can snag one, it's probably worth it because it doesn't take your turn.
That's for sure. This is one last slide to just highlight some different estimations. It takes 15 points to win if you average 0.33 points per cost. Ignoring card reuse and many other variables that always come into play in these board games, you take an average of 15 turns to win. So that's a number to keep in mind as you're going. If you're nearing 15 and you're not moving towards buying points, buying high value point things, you probably should be.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, games could take longer or shorter depending on how good of players you're playing with and everything else. Taking all this into consideration, what kind of strategies do you like employing when?
I really love the blue strategy, so I get whatever tokens I need to start buying blue at the second level. If there is that green card that is sitting at level 3 already revealed at the start of the game, that's either the 3 and 7, which gets you that 5 point card, or just that 7 cost that gets you 4 points, which is the best cost card in the game, points per cost. um, I reserve one of those two off the bat, or at least I try to. If anyone else is going that strategy, sometimes I'll diversify, because if it's sometimes hard to compete if you're going blue against somebody else who's going blue. Maybe then I'd go green, but my favorite strategy is the blue heavy strategy.
Yeah, I definitely think going up, like a straight route up like that is probably the best until people start blocking you. Um, does rarely happen. Usually, I'm the only person who actively blocks people. Um, uh, and then going wider is better. Going tall like that. Well, I call it going tall because you're just going straight. Is definitely the most efficient in terms of chips and cost wise.
Yeah, that's for sure. Sometimes what I do is I start going deep, and then maybe I have 3 blue cards, and then I start to spread out a little bit. And it'll be very common that we'll follow the nobles, so that the way I spread out is I hit white and green first, because those are kind of the wings supporting blue for most of the costs.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to look at it. Is this the last slide?
Yep, this is the last slide.
Do you have any idea for us on what we're going to cover next week?
Not entirely sure yet. At some point we'll definitely take a look at Ticket to Ride. But possibly next week we'll take a look at Acquire, which if you've never played is basically what Monopoly should have been.
I can definitely agree with that. It's a very fun game. Well, we'll all look forward to that. Thank you all for talking with us. Please comment, subscribe, and smash that like button. Lynn, is there anything you want to advertise, or are you just going to give them your send off?
Thanks for listening.
All
And
right.
if you could hear my cats in the background, thanks for. They say hi.
All right. Thank you guys all for listening. See you later.
Bye.